So many professionals do better when they limit their focus to two or three primary growth pillars. Okay. Despite what everyone else is saying out there from a marketing perspective, you need to dabble in this, dabble in that. That just creates confusion and overwhelm. I'm Sylvie Garibaldi, founder and CEO of a well-established marketing training and done-for-you services company, tailored specifically for the modern legal and financial professional worldwide. While it's taken some trial and error to figure out which methods get the best results for professionals who are looking to grow their practices, fast forward to today, my team and I have nailed down and perfected a process that has helped so many of our clients consistently achieve outstanding results and create a legacy for their practices. I created the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast to give you simple, actionable, non-salesy, and results-driven marketing to grow your legal or financial practice like so many of our clients have. If you're a lawyer, mediator, financial, or divorce professional who is looking to become highly visible and wants to create a practice that makes an impact, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 105 of the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast. I'm your host, Sylvie Garibaldi. So as we step into a new year, there's usually a lot of pressure to move quickly, right? To plan, to act, to get momentum back. But before any of that, I think it's really worth slowing down just enough to make sure that you're building on the right foundation. And so in the last episode 104, I did something very intentional. Instead of talking about new tactics or big picture strategy, I invited you into a real simple debrief. And that was designed to show you clearly what actually brought you clients over the past year. So not assumptions, not vague answers like referrals or word of mouth, but the real sources, the specific people, the conversations and moments that led someone to reach out and work with you. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I highly encourage you to do so. I hope you took the time to engage in that exercise in episode 104, because if you did, you will have clarity and you can see exactly what worked, you can see what didn't work, and you can see where your time and energy actually translated into new cases, new fees, and forward momentum. And I think that clarity really matters. But here's what I want to focus on today. Every January, professionals take that clarity and turn it into a plan, a reasonable plan, a thoughtful plan. And, it's one that's built on good information. And then what happens is very quietly, many of those plans fall apart by February. Can you relate to that? And I think it's not because the plan was wrong, it's because the professional, the person implementing the plan, was not committed. And part of the reason of that is that real life speeds up, right? Client work intensifies, urgency takes over. And I think under that pressure, people revert to familiar habits without even realizing it. So in today's episode, we're going to do two things. First, I'm going to walk you through the most common reasons marketing plans collapse early in the year, the patterns that I see every single year when I work with lawyers, mediators, and other trust-based professionals. And second, I'm going to show you how to protect your plan. So what do I mean by this? How to take the clarity that you gained in the last episode and turn it into something that actually holds up when things get busy. So something simple, realistic, and designed for real professional practices. So this is not an episode about doing more. It's really about understanding why plans fail under pressure and how to design your 2026 marketing so that it stays intact well beyond January, right? Because the goal for 2026 isn't to create a perfect plan. It is to build a plan that still exists, that is working continually, even when February comes around. So I want to walk you through why most plans fail, but I also want to spend some time to make sure that yours is strong enough to make it through the course of the year. All right, so let's move into this. So the first reason most marketing plans fall apart by February is pretty simple, but it's also easy to miss. Professionals begin to override data with emotion. So what do I mean by this? In January, things can feel relatively calm. It's the start of the new year. There's space to think clearly and enough distance from the previous year to reflect without pressure, right? You can look back at what happened and see patterns more objectively. And you can also say, wow, this worked. Or you can say something like, this didn't work. And you can make decisions based on evidence rather than urgency. Then February rolls around and client work really picks up. Schedules tighten, deadlines return, and almost without noticing, that calm clarity is replaced by a different feeling. And that's pressure. And so, under pressure, something subtle but important happens. Even when professionals have solid information in front of them, they start to question it. They start wondering whether what they did last year was really enough. They consider whether they should be doing more. They notice others who appear busier and they begin to compare themselves. So, without realizing it, what happens is you slowly move away from what you already know works. And this doesn't happen because the data has changed or the information has changed. It happens because your emotional state has changed. And this is the point where most marketing plans begin to unravel. So instead of doubling down on proven sources, what's happening is you start scanning for reassurance, right? You look for new ideas, new platforms, new tactics that make you feel active and productive in that moment. And I really believe that that activity can feel like momentum, but more often than not, it's actually distraction. And so what I see repeatedly is this. The activities that brought in clients last year often feel too quiet to trust. They require patience, they require repetition, they require doing the same small things even when there's no immediate payoff. And when work becomes busy and attention is divided, that quiet consistency can start to feel uncomfortable or insufficient. So people pivot. They add more activities, they experiment with new approaches, and in the process, they dilute the very strategies that were already working. So this is not a discipline problem. It's a human response to pressure. When professionals do not expect this emotional shift, what they do is they interpret it as a signal that something needs to change, when in reality, it's often a signal that nothing needs to change at all, because the information you gathered in December or last year or early January didn't lose its value simply because February comes around. So the professionals who grow with intention are the ones who learn to recognize this moment. You need to notice when your emotions start to override data or evidence, and then pause instead of pivoting. Okay, so you need to remind yourself that what worked before is still working. And you need to recognize that you don't need more activity, you just need consistency. That was part of the exercise we did in episode 104. And I think that that awareness alone is often enough to keep an entire marketing plan from falling apart. Okay, so the second reason most marketing plans fail by February is that they're built around outcomes rather than behaviors. So many professionals start the year with clear goals. They know what they want. They want more referrals. They want more visibility. They want more inquiries coming in consistently. They want to build their influence. And so on the surface, all of these goals make sense. But these goals are not plans, they're outcomes. And what is often missing is a clear connection between the outcome and the specific actions that make it happen on a regular basis. So, for example, a lawyer might say that they want more referrals from other professionals. A mediator might say that they want to be the first name people think of when conflict arises. And so these are all valid goals, but they don't explain what needs to happen week to week for that to become a reality. And I think without that clarity, the plan depends heavily on motivation. So in January, we're all motivated, right? It's the beginning of the year. There's lots of energy. There's optimism. There's a sense of momentum simply because the year is new. And I think during that period, professionals will post more. They'll reach out more. They'll set plans in place. They'll say yes to more opportunities. But motivation is not stable. And so as the year progresses and client work becomes more demanding, motivation fades. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. And so when that happens, any plan that relies on enthusiasm rather than structure begins to break down. So I think you see where I'm going with this, right? And this is where many lawyers and mediators will run into trouble. They may want to be more visible, but they only post when they have time to think or they feel inspired. They may want stronger referral relationships, but they don't really have a regular rhythm for staying in touch with people who matter most. And they may want to speak more or teach more, but they only pursue those opportunities when things feel slow. And in any case, the goal exists, but the behavior is inconsistent. That's what I'm trying to say here. And so, without defined behaviors, marketing really just becomes optional. And it gets postponed when things get busy and picked up only when there's concern about the pipeline. And so, over time, what we see in the marketing field is that this start and stop pattern very quickly erodes trust, visibility, and momentum. And so that's why the stopping and starting is actually very expensive to engage in. And so what actually happens is growth in professional practices is really all about repetition. And so clients don't refer because someone had a good intention. They refer because they experienced that clarity, that consistency at a moment that really mattered. And so referral partners don't remember you because you wanted to be visible, right? They remember you because you were visible. You show up regularly in small, predictable ways. And so the professionals who avoid this trap do something really different. They translate each goal into small, repeatable actions that can survive even the busiest of weeks. And so instead of saying, I want more referrals, they decide how often they will check in with referral partners and what check in looks like. Instead of saying, I want to be more visible, they decide how often they will show up and in what way. They're very specific. And so these behaviors may not be impressive, but they're very consistent and dependable. And this dependable behavior is what really keeps a marketing plan alive beyond January. Okay, I hope this is making sense. The third reason most marketing plans fall apart by February is that professionals try to do too many things at once. And so at the start of the year, as I said, motivation is high. And so many lawyers and mediators look at their goals and they think that the safest approach is to keep as many options open as possible. So they want to stay visible on social media. They want to nurture referral partners. They want to attend networking events. They want to speak. They want to write. They want to teach. They want to show up everywhere they might be seen. And on paper, it looks like commitment. So when everything is a priority, nothing receives enough attention to build real momentum. And so each activity just gets enough effort to feel busy, but not enough consistency to produce results. And this is especially common in professions like yours. And so, a lawyer might post occasionally on LinkedIn or attend a few networking events or have a speaking engagement. And a mediator may host a workshop, write an article, or join a committee, but not repeat any of those actions long enough for people to associate them with a specific kind of expertise. And so as a result, visibility stays scattered. So instead of building familiarity, professionals reset their efforts every few weeks. They move from one idea to the next, hoping someone's going to click without allowing any single channel or relationship to mature. This is a huge problem. And so this becomes even more pronounced once February arrives. And so what we see with a lot of our clients is as workloads increase, time becomes fragmented, right? Marketing tasks get squeezed into small gaps between client matters. And while there are too many channels to manage, the easiest response to do is to do a little of everything and then quietly let most of it slide. And unfortunately, that does not create consistency. So when professionals refuse to choose, they unintentionally sabotage their own efforts. And maybe you can relate to this. And you could believe that you're staying flexible when in reality, you're preventing depth from forming anywhere. And so the professionals who avoid this pattern, they make a very different decision early in the year. They choose to work with fewer channels and commit to them fully, and they allow momentum to build slowly instead of constantly restarting. And they understand that focus is not a limitation. It's actually a multiplier. And I'm going to be spending a few minutes in this episode to go over how to do this. And so I think by narrowing your efforts, you're actually reducing decision fatigue. And you start to give your best strategies the time they actually need to work. And this is one of the quiet but critical differences between marketing plans that survive past February and those that quietly disappear. All right. If you're listening to this episode and thinking, wow, I'd love to get some guidance on how to build this strategically, that's exactly what we do at SG and Associates. We help professionals, whether they're inside a firm or running your own practice, to map out your brand and visibility plan that builds authority, trust, and brings in consistent business. If this is you, book a strategy call with me. You can find the link in the show notes. All right. The fourth reason most marketing plans fall apart is not a lack of intention, it's a weak design. So January is often a forgiving month, as I've mentioned before. Calendars have a bit more space, the pace is slower, there's room to think, plan, and experiment without constant interruption. But February is much less forgiving, right? By then, client matters are back in full force, court schedules are active, files move faster, emotions run higher. And for mediators, for example, conflict is no longer theoretical, right? It's happening in real time. And so this is where marketing plans are really tested. Not in ideal weeks, but in the real weeks. Many marketing plans only work when conditions are perfect. They assume long blocks of time, high energy, and uninterrupted focus. And it relies on creativity, motivation, or the hope that there will be space later to catch up. And I think when these conditions disappear, the plan disappears with them. And so a lawyer may intend to write thoughtful posts or articles, but only when there's time to do them really well. Or a mediator may plan to stay visible, but only when they have the emotional bandwidth after difficult sessions. We see this all the time with the clients that we work with, and we know this pattern. And when weeks become demanding, marketing gets postponed, not intentionally, but just automatically. And so this does not mean that you are undisciplined. Let me reassure you of that. It means that your plan was never designed to survive under pressure. And so strong marketing systems account for reality, what real business life looks like. These plans assume busy weeks will happen. It assumes that energy is going to fluctuate because as humans, our energy fluctuates. And it assumes that our attention is going to be divided. And so what we see is that weak plans ignore these realities. And what ends up happening is they collapse the moment that they are exposed. And this is why so many professionals feel as though their marketing works in spurts. They show up when things are calm, and then they disappear when work intensifies. And so over time, that inconsistency undermines trust and momentum, even if the work itself is excellent. And so in law and mediation, this inconsistency is particularly costly. Clients and referral partners are not looking for constant output. They are looking for reliability. They want to know that you are consistent, that you're present, that you're accessible, even when things are busy. And so these are signals, these are signs that referral partners are looking for. And so when marketing requires ideal conditions, this just becomes fragile, right? Because when it's designed for real life conditions, it becomes much more sustainable. And so it's these professionals who have these plans that survive past February, and they're not doing more. They're simply doing less, but with better structure in place. Their actions are smaller, their expectations are more realistic, and the systems that they have built, they function even during the busy, difficult weeks. And so February doesn't change priorities. It just reveals whether a plan was designed to handle a busy reality. I hope this is making sense. I hope this is resonating with you. And I think that this distinction really makes all the difference. So the fifth reason most marketing plans fall apart by February is that marketing quietly becomes optional. Can any of you relate to that? This usually doesn't happen through a conscious decision. No one sits down and decides that marketing no longer matters, right? Instead, it just gets deprioritized in small, reasonable ways. And so client work is going to feel more urgent. Marketing feels important, but it feels like you can postpone it. So when a lawyer is managing deadlines or maybe court appearances or client emergencies, marketing just moves down the priority list. And so when a mediator is holding space for difficult conversations or navigating emotionally charged matters, marketing feels like something that can just wait when things calm down. And we get that. We understand that. And the problem is that things rarely calm down for long. So we've been around a long time to see the patterns in marketing for professionals. And so that perfect time will never come around. There is no such thing as a perfect calm time. So when marketing is treated as optional, it's the first thing to be postponed and the last thing to be restarted. And so over time, those small delays compound into long gaps of invisibility. And that's what makes this especially dangerous, is this lag effect. So the marketing that you do today doesn't usually create immediate work tomorrow. That's the reality. And it creates familiarity, it creates trust and recognition that will pay off weeks or months later. And when professionals pause their marketing during busy periods, they do not feel the impact right away. This is a key point. You're going to feel it later. You're going to feel it when inquiries slow down. You're going to feel it when referrals become inconsistent. And you're going to feel it when the pipeline feels thinner than expected. And honestly, by that point, the damage has already been done. This is why marketing plans that rely on urgency will always fail. Because when marketing is positioned as something to do only when there's time, it will always lose to the client work. And yet, client work exists because the marketing and relationships that came before that. Does that make sense? So we know that in law and mediation, this pattern is particularly common because the work is high stakes and emotionally demanding. Professionals are trained to respond to urgency, to prioritize others, and to put their own visibility last. And honestly, over time, this just creates an unstable cycle. And so the professionals who break this cycle to do something different, the ones that treat marketing as foundational rather than optional, they protect small, regular action even during busy weeks. And so this is why we work with a lot of our clients. We teach them how to do this, and others actually use us to do it for them. And so we will do the implementation. So they understand that visibility is not separate from their work, it actually supports it. So this doesn't mean that marketing takes precedence over clients. I'm not saying that. It means that it's designed to coexist with client work, not compete with it. So when marketing remains part of the rhythm of the practice, even in a reduced form, momentum really stays intact and trust continues to build. So the plan survives the pressure of a busy practice. So by February, the difference becomes really clear. Some professionals are already reacting to gaps in their pipeline. Others are quietly continuing the behaviors that keep their practice stable. So it really comes down to whether marketing was treated as optional or essential when pressure comes back, when pressure exists, right? So that's an important point. All right, so up to this point, everything that we talked about has been really diagnostic. We've looked at the patterns that cause marketing plans to fall apart early in the year. And once again, it's not because professionals are careless or unfocused, but really because pressure changes how decisions get made. Now I want to shift the conversation because understanding why plans fail is only useful if it helps you do something different. So the question is not whether February will get busy. I think you and I know it will. The question is whether your plan is designed to survive that reality. So in this next part, I want to walk you through how to make sure your 2026 marketing plan doesn't quietly disappear. So it's really all about protecting what already works. So the first thing to understand is that strong marketing plans are not built for ideal conditions. They are built for real life scenarios. They assume that you're going to be busy. They assume that motivation is going to fluctuate, and they assume that attention is going to be divided, right, between client work, deadlines, and everything else that comes in between. So instead of asking, what do I want to achieve this year? I want you to start by asking a different question. What do I know already works? And if you completed the debrief from last episode, you already know that answer. You know which sources actually brought you clients. You know which activities translated into real conversations, referrals, or matters. And that information is your foundation. I want to repeat that. That information is your foundation, okay? You don't need to be spending hours making up fancy marketing plans. The mistake many professionals make is they try to improve or expand way too quickly, and they treat clarity as a starting point for reinvention. But in reality, clarity is just a signal to protect before you optimize, okay? So your first job is not to add new strategies. It's to lock in what already worked and make sure it doesn't get pushed aside when things get busy. So that's going to be priority number one. And once you've identified your strongest sources, the next step is to choose fewer of them, not more. So many professionals do better when they limit their focus to 2 or 3 primary growth pillars. Okay, despite what everyone else is saying out there from a marketing perspective, you need to dabble in this, dabble in that. That just creates confusion and overwhelm. You need to focus in on 2 or 3 primary growth pillars. They might include referral partners, visibility on a particular platform, speaking, maybe teaching opportunities. So choosing fewer pillars is not a constraint. It's actually a form of protection, a protection for your time. When you narrow your focus, you reduce decision fatigue. And when you reduce the number of things competing for your time, you're going to increase the likelihood that your efforts will be consistent enough to compound. And after that, each pillar needs to be translated into a behavior. Okay? So this is where many plans will fail. As I mentioned before, a goal like more referrals, more visibility, it sounds clear, but it's actually very vague. And it doesn't guide your calendar. It doesn't tell you what you need to do on Tuesday afternoon when your energy is low and your inbox is full. The actual behavior is going to tell you what to do. So for example, if referral partners are one of your pillars, the behavior might be one short check-in every week on Friday with someone in your network. Not a pitch, not a long meeting, just a simple touch point that maintains the relationship. And remember, that pillar that you've identified of connecting with a referral partner, you are redoing this over and over again because you've identified that this foundational pillar works for you in your business. So this is why we're repeating it, because you know that with certain referral partners, you are building relationships that result in referrals. So this is why I'm saying that you're going to repeat that. You're going to put that on your calendar. So if visibility is a pillar that you've identified that really works for you, then that behavior might be 1 post per week and 2 short comments that you're going to write. And it's not when you feel inspired, you're going to have it scheduled into your calendar. If speaking has been one of your foundational pillars, the behavior might be 1 outreach message on LinkedIn per month to an organization or group that serves your ideal target market. And so these actions are intentionally small and they're designed to survive your busiest weeks, not your most productive ones. And I think a good test is this. If you can't imagine yourself doing the action during a stressful week, it's too big. The goal is not impressive effort, right? The goal is repeatable effort. And once behaviors are defined, you need to schedule them. They need to be scheduled into your calendar. If marketing only lives in your head, really, you're just going to lose whatever feels most urgent that day. And so when actions are on your calendar or built into a weekly rhythm, they stop competing with client work and start coexisting with it. So your plan needs review points, not constant judgment. So here's another thing I want you to think about. Once you start scheduling these foundational pillars that you've already identified that were working and where your clients are coming from, you're going to schedule them in, and then you need to review these points. And so you don't need to reevaluate your marketing every week. That usually just leads to overreaction. Instead, I want you to schedule in a 90-day review, right? So at that point, you can ask what grew, what worked, what stalled, maybe what needs refinement. And this allows you to adjust without abandoning the plan entirely, okay? So when marketing is designed this way, it becomes steadier. It stops relying on motivation and starts relying on a structure. And that structure, once it's in your calendar and you're repeating it, becomes a habit. This is what allows a plan to really survive past February. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with something really simple. Most professionals don't struggle with marketing because they lack effort or discipline or intelligence or commitment. They basically struggle because no one really has taught them how to protect momentum when the year gets busy. And so by February, the difference between practices that feel steady and those that feel reactive is rarely talent. It's just design. And so the professionals who continue to grow are not doing more marketing. They're doing fewer things, but they're doing them more consistently and with much clearer intention. So here's your next step. Set aside 30 minutes sometime this week, not to plan the entire year, just to slow down long enough to ground yourself. Open your client list from last year, write down where every client actually came from. As we talked about, circle those 2 or 3 sources that mattered most. Then ask yourself, what behaviors supported those sources, even in small ways? And as I mentioned, we go through this exercise in episode 104. I highly recommend you do this. And then listen to this episode, 105, and go through the strategy, okay? So this is not a document. This is not a strategy deck. This is a short list of actions that you can repeat even when things get busy. And if you protect those behaviors, guess what? You're actually protecting your pipeline. Thanks for tuning in today. And if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss future episodes packed with actionable strategies to grow your practice. See you in the next episode.